there. Welcome back to the Painful Truth channel, where we dive deep into uncomfortable topics in order to grow as a human being with real people and real stories. And I'm so excited today. Our special guest is Lisa Meister, a victor of satanic ritual abuse and an accomplished author. A link to her book, Only God Rescued Me, is in the description of this video. And I'm super excited for myself. I ordered the book and I'm excited to read it. If you are new to this channel, my name is Abby. I'm the host of The Painful Truth. And I just ask you guys to subscribe, like, and ring the notification bell so that you get the newest download or upload of the next top story. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you guys so much for returning. And I just ask everyone to have compassion and love for everyone. With the topic today, I think it's kind of best to just start with a protection prayer. And so we'll go ahead and we'll pray a little bit. Dear God, thank you so much for creating Lisa. Thank you for being there for her during some of the darkest times of her life that most brothers and sisters cannot, and for some refuse to know and understand. Thank you for pulling Lisa out of the dark and allowing her to find healing through you. I ask you in the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ, to garnish a hedge of protection over this uncomfortable conversation. We ask you to keep the demons at bay for us and our listeners. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So Lisa, we just want to know who you are.
Well, thank you for having me, Abby. I love the idea of your channel. There's so many uncomfortable things that need to be talked about. So many people don't want to listen to them. So I also want to applaud all your listeners, because when we can start having those uncomfortable conversations, we can start dealing with some very difficult topics of things that are going on, abuses that need to be dealt with. And I would like to think a normal person. I am been married for 31 years to a wonderful man, godly man, a Christian. I have 4 kids. They're all in their 20s. 3 of them are married. I've got 4 grandchildren. So we've got life going on in very normal ways. And we were, my husband and I got married. We met in college, and we were going along life in general. I was falling apart, didn't know why, but everything seemed okay until I was 29. And then all these flashbacks started hitting, and I was just blindsided by my past. So sometimes we feel like we're going along, we're doing all the right things, and then evil comes and just hits us. And then you have to start looking at it. And sometimes we have to look at evil and we don't want to. And I didn't want to look at it. But the only reason that I did was because I knew my kids were in danger. And if I didn't look at it and if I didn't face it, then it was going to happen to them as well. And the grooming that I was seeing my dad doing with my children is what finally broke the repression and everything that I had, all the barriers that I had put to facing the abuse in my background. And a lot of people know about repression. A lot of people that have been sexually abused or have a lot of trauma in their background put these barriers on it, because you cannot keep going through day-to-day life as a child carrying on if you keep thinking about it. So they always say, like, my mom's big motto was, well, kids are resilient. And to her, I think it made it like, we could do whatever we want to them because they keep going. And they do, but it has a lot to do with those amnesic barriers that kids build up so that they can keep going. And I really think God gives us that ability.
Yeah.
For kids. I mean, it's a survival technique that he gives us. And I had that pretty well. I mean, when it hit me, I'm like, how could I not know? So the first things that hit were sexual abuse with my dad in the home. I'm like, how did I not know that? How would I not know that he did that to me? And I didn't know about repression back then. I didn't know about toxic family systems. I didn't know any of that. I grew up with this illusion that we had a great family, And when I went to look back at it, how did I ever even think that? Because my dad was a tyrant. My mom was cold and distant always. But in my, as a child, you just kind of romanticize everything. It's like, oh, we have this great family. And then I went back and looked at it. It's like, no, it was wrecked from the beginning. Then I had to start looking at it differently. It's like, no, it was never good. It was always nasty. So the first thing I went and did was I went to a store in I think a book by Dr. Allender. It was Toxic Family Systems. And I bought that book because I didn't know anything. And he was talking about this family of, it's like, this is my family he's talking about. And it was eye-opening. It's like, we are textbook toxic family. It goes talk about needing validation. Just reading that book, it's like he lived in my house growing up because he's naming exactly what we went through. And then when they started getting into what repression was and telling you what it was, I'm like, I learned it all from my mom. All of that, don't think about it, just go on. Read the Psalms and go on. Or, questioning things. Or don't talk about this to anybody. This is a family thing. Once even an uncle got divorced and she told me about it. She's like, Lisa, don't tell anybody. This is a family thing. And I'm like, who's going to care? Like, who cares that I have an uncle that got divorced? It's this big shame in the family. I'm like, nobody's even going to care. And then she said, don't even tell Patrick, who's my husband. This is a family thing. Don't even tell Patrick. And that's where that distancing, you will never belong to him. You'll always belong to us. And, it's just all whacked. It's all crazy. So
she was even repressing any kind of thing that was going on in your family, not just, did she know about what your father was doing?
Yep. She knew, she was part of the group. She walked in on him on top of me in the middle of the night once. And she stood in the door and I could see her fists clenching and unclenching. She was mad. Like, why she walked in, I don't know. And I remember thinking, ooh, maybe she'll stop it. And he yelled at her, snarled her name and said, get out of here. And she twirled around, walked out and closed the door. Like, why did she walk in the first place? Like, why did she even come in?
Do you think that your mom suffered abuse when she was younger and that's why she was able to deal with what happened with her husband?
Probably. I think that it's all generational on both sides. Now, some people say, oh, well, she's a victim too. I don't buy that. I think at a certain point, when you're willing to just give up your child and you're participating in it as well, I don't buy the victim stuff anymore. At that point, you're perpetrator. And I just don't have any sympathy for him anymore. Just my way of looking at it personally, where I am right now. Some people might say, well, you're just unforgiving. I forgive them for what they did to me. But when I start looking around society and the mom after mom after mom who does see, like I had a friend whose mom, she actually talked to her mom later on in life and said, Mom, you knew what he was doing to me. She said, oh, when he would start, I would just check out. That's wrong. They're your kids. They're your responsibility to protect. And I don't care what your past trauma was or what your trauma with the spouse is. You don't allow it. You put your life on the line if you have to, but you do not allow it. And you fight tooth and nail, even if they take your kids away from you, but you fight tooth and nail to stop it. And I know a lot of women who have fought tooth and nail and the courts have taken their children away from them, but at least they did everything they could to stop it. And they're heroes. They're the heroes in our society. And there's a lot of them that are out there. But those moms that are like, oh, well, we got to feel sorry for them, that they're victims too. It's like, no, they're perpetrators because they're lining up. They're enablers, they're perpetrators, they're allowing the abuse or they're participating in the abuse. I don't buy it. And that's uncomfortable too, because people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the level of abuse is so bad that I don't believe that they can just not know.
Yeah.
You know, that long. I mean, it went through my whole growing up period. It didn't stop. So.
And we've heard of these different programmings that these abusers will do on people. Do you think that you had some sort of programming to make you go into that DID or whatever, the repression?
Oh yeah, they have certain words. They have certain things to get you compliable and things like that. Absolutely. And so some people might even say for your mom, well, they were just keeping her compliable, controlled, manipulated, programmed, whatever. It's like, yeah, but you're not always in that program, and there's breakthroughs where you understand what's going on. So you can figure it out. You can get away. It's possible. They choose not to. That's a choice that they make. And then there's people like, well, they put their life on the line if they don't leave. It's like, well, yeah, but we put our life on the line getting out too. And by staying in, you're participating in this torture and murdering of children by being there. That's criminal. So if they're saying, oh, well, you got to feel bad for them because they're in this terrible spot. If they leave, they're going to kill them. Yeah, it could happen. And there's probably more than a 50% chance that it will happen. But it's the right thing to do. And it's better than to continue to kill people. You know what I'm saying? There's all this, let's have sympathy for them. Like, I have no sympathy for the people that are participating in this. Because otherwise we could say, well, all of them are controlled. None of them know what they're doing. All of them are raised up in it. They're just doing what they were programmed to do. It's like, then nobody's in control, then nobody's responsible for these horrendous crimes that they're doing. And then all the people that are involved in this, they have that breakthrough pedophilia and perversion that's going out against their own children and the children in their circles. Are they not responsible for that too? I mean, you start looking at the ramifications of all this stuff. It's big. And if we're not going to hold anybody accountable, then it's we cannot do that. That's egregious.
Yeah.
They are making decisions. They are profiting off of it. They're purposely calling demons into themselves to get demonic power in these rituals of what they're doing. Oh, so we were in sexual abuse in the home, and then 9 months into recovery of those memories, I got into memories of satanic ritual abuse. And I had no idea. Like, all of a sudden, there's people in Grim Reaper like robes. If you see a Grim Reaper costume, that's exactly what they look like. And chanting and candles and graves and dead animals and blood. Like, I had no idea what this was. I'd never heard of this before. I don't watch horror movies. I don't read any kind of scary books. I had no reference for it. I don't watch shock rock. I don't listen to pop music. There's no way that was in there. And so it took a while to figure out what it even was. And we went to a psychiatrist who I'd gone to at a clinic early on because I was going crazy. And he said, crazy people don't know they're going crazy. So that helped me feel better. So we went back to him and he said, oh, I knew you were ritually abused. I'm like, how would you know that? And he said the severity of what your dad did to you in the home was in the 90-something percentile. And that doesn't happen unless satanic ritual abuse is going on.
So that means he must have seen that from other victims in his career to know that. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. And I wish I could go back and ask him those questions now. That would be interesting. Well, okay, now I want to know what you know. Back then, I was just shocked by, I wasn't even sure it was real back then. And now he's telling me, well, I already knew that about you. That was a lot to take in. That was.
So I'm sure it's confusing when those flashbacks started to happen, and you probably you thought you were going crazy. You didn't even believe what you were seeing or visioning. But it started with the sexual abuse, and then later on, 9 months later, it came into the ritual abuse. Why does that go hand in hand together? The sexual and the ritual.
Right. The ritual always has sex elements involved. So they do a ritual, and in the ritual, what they're doing in the torturing of the child is they're calling demons into the child. And once the demons are in the child, then they gang rape the child, because everybody that rapes the child then gets the demons into them. And you can really feel them going through you into the person as they do that. So,
and do you recall those types of memories through your flashbacks?
Sure. Yeah. So because they're participating in these sexual perversions, they're pedophiles, right? Because they're doing these to kids. It twists their minds. They get more and more perverted, and then they got to do stuff at home. And so everything at home was very sexually perverted with what he was doing to me. And so, that's where the psychiatrist was like, it was so severe with what he was doing to you, it doesn't happen. So it wasn't like just touching or just fondling himself sort of stuff. I mean, it was nasty stuff that he was doing. You're not going to have people in rituals that are not sexually deviant outside of the rituals. It's so perverted. It's like people that watch pornography, they just get twisted, right? They can't watch pornography and not get twisted. It's the same way. You cannot participate in the rituals and not get really, really twisted badly. And it comes out in pedophilia. And that's where it comes out, because that's what they're doing in the rituals. And that's where they start lusting after it. And the demons that are involved in it start pulling them towards that sort of thing. And it's sick, it's perverted, it's nasty. And those demons just keep pulling them towards it more and more. And they have to do it more and more. And they have to have more and more rituals to keep the demons happy. I mean, these people are not sleeping at night. They're up, they're prowling the house at night. They're just miserable people. There's no joy in following the devil.
Yeah. Which is crazy, because was your father a pharmacist?
Yeah.
I mean, and a parent, and your family, y'all were from a small town, is that correct? But everybody kind of knew your family, and people that remembered you guys knew you guys as being really smart and intelligent people. Your family, was your mom a pharmacist as well, or just your father?
Just my father. Okay. She was a stay-at-home mom. She was sick all the time while I was growing up. She would just get deathly ill from different things, but she was not college educated. I think she always felt bad about that. She told me once that late in her senior year, she decided she wanted to go to college. So she went to the counselor, and the counselor said, "Oh, it's too late." And didn't say, "Well, you can apply for the next year or anything," just said it's too late. And she's like, "Oh, that's it's like, wow."
Yeah. That's sad.
Yeah.
But you went to college, you got a degree, and were you valedictorian of your high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. That's awesome. And do you think, because I've heard that when you are abused like that, you almost kind of get really good at other things, like you kind of focus in on certain things. Was that for you with like your academics?
Yeah. Love reading, love writing. That was my deal. And just dove into that. And that was my world. Get myself out of where I am. You can go anywhere in a book, and I could just go other places. And education, loved it. So I became an elementary school teacher and just continued that passion, and taught for a few years. And I homeschooled all my kids all the way through high school. Loved it. Wow. Wonderful experience. Yeah, just amazing. Be able to
amazing.
The passion of watching education from birth all the way through graduating from high school, which, you know, just, it was just that passion that I had. It's like, oh, education. And now I get to watch it again with my grandchildren, just watching that same process. You know, they see a problem and it's like, ooh, they're problem solving, how they're going to solve this, and just watching them trying to figure out how they're going to get this problem solved. It just fascinates me. I love it. But
Yeah, that is neat.
But I was being able to do that got me out of the abuse, got me out of the horrible situation in a home. And like you said, got my mind someplace else. And it was something that actually got me out of the whole place so I could go away to college. And that was 4 hours away.
Oh, was it? Okay. But at the time you didn't really know why you were trying to run away. Or
No.
was it just because your mom was a tyrant at home and your dad, do you remember your dad being an angry person at home, or how was he at home?
He was horrible, horrible. So he would come home through the door. And I remember once he would explode. He would just explode at people. So everybody was just not there when he was there. Like, personality wise, you never gave an opinion ever. You never talked unless you had to. And like, he would, if he asked you a question, it was never like really he wanted to know something. It was a setup. So he was looking for an answer and you were trying to think, okay, which answer am I going to get the least amount of trouble for getting him? And it wasn't even like you did something wrong kind of an answer. It was, I mean, it could be anything. And so you'd be sitting there. It's like, okay, if I say this, I'm going to get in trouble for this. If I say that, I'm going to get in trouble for that. And it wasn't until years later that I realized both of them were going to get me in a lot of trouble. Like, even when I found out about what abortion was, and I like, oh, that's horrible. How could anybody kill their baby? He screamed at me. How dare you have an opinion on something you know nothing about? Like, I was in trouble for it. In trouble. I'm like, why did I say that out loud? I know better than that. That's stupid. Like,
So it was like walking on eggshells at home.
Oh, absolutely. I got in trouble once because I put the salt and pepper shakers away without washing them first. I never knew you had to wash them. Screamed at for it. You know, I mean, it's like you never knew you're going to get in trouble because you just did. You never knew what it was going to be for, but he would find something because he was an angry man and he was going to take it out on you. So you'd be sitting doing your homework. He'd come home from work. He'd be sitting on the recliner watching TV until he went to bed. You'd be trying to do your homework, but you'd have to get up and turn the channel for him, or you'd have to get up to get him a beer, or you'd have to get up and get him a snack, or you'd have to get up and give him the, you know, whatever it was that he needed from you. And it didn't matter what, you know, you're doing your homework, but that's, you know, you were there to serve him. That was your job. So coming home from work, he got really angry because nobody greeted him when he came through the door. So I made sure when he came through the door, I was going to take that over. I would run to the door like I was so excited to see him and give him a big hug. Made me feel sick, but like, I have to do this so nobody else gets in trouble. That's the kind of man he was. It was sick.
Was he only like that with you, or because you had brothers as well, right?
Yeah, he was like that with
all. Was he
like
that with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just an angry, horrid man.
Yeah. And how did he get involved? And she was kind of the same way, just
she was just cold and distant.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah. And do you think that's from dealing with your dad, or was she kind of always that way?
I think she was always that way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any memories of sitting on her lap and being held or loved by her. I don't remember any tender moments with her. Like, even when I got married, like, we were supposed to go to both parents and say, I love you, give them a hug. And I'm like, this is the moment. Okay, Mom, I love you. And she's like, your veil is all askew. And she just started tugging on it. Like, she was really angry that my veil wasn't perfect. You know, I'm like, wow, that was touching. This was our one moment, you know, you muffed it. Yeah. That was the only one you got. And she just, that's the way it was with her. It was, I mean, I've talked to other people. I'm like, they have these tender moments with their mom. And I'm like, there was never anything with her, ever. Not one. Like, I don't remember any nice thing with her. So I don't think it was just that she lived with him and he was awful. She was awful too.
How do you think that your father got involved in the group?
I think it's generational.
You do think it's generational from his family?
Yeah, I can't prove it. I don't know how you would prove such a thing, but pretty sure. I don't know if you can get into that level of what he was doing without it, because I don't know if they would trust you if it wasn't generational, because if you tell, everybody else is going to be exposed. So the best way to know that they're not going to tell is that you're from the bloodline, right? I think that's where bloodlines become so important. We've got generations behind you, and you will not tell, because you're going to expose all your generations. And the ultimate thing is you cannot expose any member of this group. And they don't.
Can you explain the bloodline deal a little bit? Like whose bloodline?
It's kind of like royalty. If there's certain high levels of people in these groups, and it's their kids that are going to keep it up, and their kids, just like the royals do. If you've got a king, it's going to be his son that's going to be the king, and then his son's going to be the king, and his son's going to be king. And in these groups, it works the same way. So you've got high levels. So in the highest levels of satanic ritual abuse, you got all these levels of it. My dad was at a small community level, but you've got like state levels, you've got federal levels, you've got government levels, you've got world top levels. So the elite behind it. So like our blood levels would have been smaller, but it's generational. Yeah. So the higher up are the people that have been running this stuff probably for thousands of years. Yeah. And they're proud of it. And they will tell you, this is in our blood.
And do you think that he was doing this to your brothers and kind of hoping that they would kind of take this on generationally?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of information about them. I'm sure it was. I just don't have all those pieces, and, they'll have to talk someday.
Yeah. Are you right? Do you and your brothers talk about it, or can y'all talk about it?
Nope. They kicked me out when my parents did back in 1999. So.
Okay. So you're estranged from the family since 1999. That is insane. That's been a long time. Lisa, I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you. It's easier. It's easier to have them gone, and they're not just coming back, stirring stuff up constantly like some families have to keep dealing with. It's just easier to have them out.
So why did your brothers say bye? Do you think they were in it, or they just refused to believe it, or?
I don't know. I wonder about that. It goes around and around in my head at times. Yeah. And I don't know. My concern is that they just towed the family line and went and did it. I'm not sure. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope not. But the interesting thing is, both of them did not like my dad until I started speaking out and said, hey, and I didn't, this was wrong. And first I just went about the sexual abuse, because I talked to him before I had the ritual stuff. You sexually abused me. I'm not okay with that. He's like, how dare you say that about me? Sort of stuff. And they rallied around my dad. How dare you say this? He's such a godly man. All of a sudden he was a godly man. They didn't like him before, but now he's a godly man. Like, since when? Like one brother played basketball every Sunday, and he made my dad stop going with him because he was so nasty on the court with my brother's friends. So like, where was the godly man there when you made him stop playing basketball with you? Or my other brother was going to marry this really nice woman. I really liked her. And my dad took him on a bike trip, which he never did. They went biking. And my dad took him on a bike trip, which he never did. They went biking. And my dad took him on a bike trip, which he never did. They went biking. And my dad took him on a bike trip, which he never did. They went biking. And he said, she's never going to get any thinner. She wasn't fat. She's never going to get thinner, and think of what your children are look like. And she wasn't ugly.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, well, did he say anything to you about her personality or her walk with God, or about her, like, she was an opera singer, like her giftings, or like who she is? Nope. All of a sudden he was a godly man. Like, wow. Oh, wow. Okay. That's a godly man. Yeah, you should stand up for him, you know?
Were y'all raised in the church?
Yeah. We were in a Catholic church. And then when I was 7 to 14, we went to an Assemblies of God church where I got saved, filled with the Holy Spirit. And then my dad completely blew up that church, which I think that's why he went there. I think he was a plant to destroy it. And then we went back to the Catholic Church again, which was a blow, horrible blow. And I mean, it was just crazy, but they look like a very good church-going family, which is easy to look good in a church. You show up, you look put together, you put a lot of money in the collection plate, you make sure everybody knows how much money you're putting in the collection plate, which he was really good at doing. And you play the part.
It's interesting how a lot of these abusers, they have a face in the church. It's very interesting how a lot of them are part of the church. However, I guess they hate God. It's not that they don't believe in God, but they hate him, or they think that they are God.
Right. Well, and this is an interesting disconnect that I'm finding with people right now. People are starting to understand that SRA exists and it happens. They understand that it happens with people in a church. And when I'm starting to point out to people, if you're seeing witchcraft happening in your church, that means that there are people in your church participating in witchcraft and probably SRA. And it's people that you know, and that's where they fall apart. Oh no, not that person. I will stand by them forever. I'm like, let me show you what they're doing. And they're like, you're bearing false witness. Oh, really? You know, because I would have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, I am sure.
Yeah.
You know,
because were you kicked out of your church for bringing up your story?
No.
Trying to get help, or what was the deal with that?
You mean back then?
Yeah.
No.
Or okay.
Well, we've had some trouble in some churches. One church, it was for talking about the goodness of God. I got in a lot of trouble. I don't get that one. A church where now it's a Satanist came up to me and gave me an evil eye curse.
In church?
In church. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't. Oh, no, you don't. So I went to the pastors. I'm like, oh, yeah, this happened. And that's, you know, this is very serious. He's trying to take me out. And they're like, this is a very godly man. I'm like, no, he's not. He gave an evil eye curse. I think he just had the sun in his eyes. I'm like, no, he didn't have the sun in his eyes. That's not what this was. They're like, nope, that's absolutely not what it is. But it's the disconnect of, if we know them, they can't be a Satanist, right?
Yeah.
There's no way he's a Satanist. Can't be, because I know him. I've known him for a long time. So he's not, I'll stand by him forever. And we've got all these Satanists in the church, and have for a very long time. And I believe God's shaking them out right now, and because they're exposing themselves. I have another church I know of where a guy walked up to an assistant pastor. He said, I just joined the Freemasons. I'm like, kick him out. Kick him out of your church now. He's telling you he's a Satanist. Get him out. They are exposing themselves. And also in this shaking, pedophilia is starting to come out. You have a pedophile in your church, could be he's a Satanist too, kick him out. And they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so repentant. I'm not going to do it anymore. I've seen, kick him out. You let them go get right with God outside of the church walls. You cannot have a Satanist in your church. And they're running the churches. They have been given, the churches have become feeding frenzies for the wolves. It's the Satanists. They take the power, and the churches, like my dad just goes into these churches. He gets these positions of power. He goes, here's $15,000 for this cause. Here's $10,000 for this cause, or he'll go and take care of the pastor's mom who's got Alzheimer's. He did that and gets in good with them, gives them money, gives them whatever. And next thing you know, he's got positions of power in the church. And it's like, there he goes again. They know how to get in, and they're there to destroy the sheep. They're there to destroy the church, and they do it. And so you have survivors are saying, hey, here's another one. And then they turn on the survivors, and then we become the bad guys, and they gaslight us really badly. Yeah. It's like, I'm here to tell you, you need to listen to me. This is a problem for your church. You can gaslight me all you want, but it doesn't change the fact you've got a Satanist in your church. You've got a big problem. And all the churches have them. They come in unawares. Bible talks about that all over the place. In the church of Ephesus, they talk about false apostles who are not. And in Ephesus, that church, they tried them and kicked them out. And in Galatians, it says the false brethren that come in the church unawares, it says, don't put up with them even for an hour. They're there to put you in bondage and take away your liberty. Get rid of them. We have to get the Satanists out of the church. Yeah. And my dad has been in the church his whole life. And my mom, and most survivors that you talk to, their parents are in good standing in the church. And the survivors saying, hey, this horrible thing happened to me. They're like, how dare you say that about this godly person? And then we're treated like we're horrible.
Yeah.
It's like, how does that happen? How does that happen? I can't.
Are your parents still alive today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're still actively involved in the church?
Well, my dad had a stroke several years ago, and I don't know. I don't have any idea if he's functional or not. So I'm sure they're still in church. I don't know how involved they would be. He's got to be close to late 70s, I'm thinking, probably.
Okay.
So,
and in your flashbacks or whatever, do you remember other people being there besides your father that you knew?
It's hard to say who was there because of the hoods. They're very good at hiding. So those Grim Reaper robes, the hood part at the top kind of goes down a little bit and shades their face. So I'm not real good at saying exactly who the people were. Like, could you see their faces? No. I do know who some of the people were that were there through other means, through hearing voices, them talking to each other. One was through this creepy college professor. My senior year of college, I was at a small school, so I got sent to a community college to take classes because I ran out of classes to take. And this English professor was in this wheelchair. He had one leg. And when he was wheeling around the class and lecturing, he would lean in really close to me into my personal space while he was talking. And it was creepy and scary. Just me, nobody else. And finally, one night at dinner, I talked about it, and they started laughing. And they said, oh, yeah, he was in that spiritualist camp we were in, which is the group that they were involved in that did the rituals. So I knew so they had a college professor, they had a judge, they had a sheriff, they had an attorney, they had a doctor. My dad was the pharmacist, and that's how these groups operate. They have very high level people in their community so they can facilitate it, so they can shut the kids up from ever speaking, making sure it doesn't get police reports started, that sort of thing. The doctor, I remember being fixed up at the end of rituals. I remember him once saying, you guys hurt her too much this time. You got to have to be more careful next time, because it can't have you noticeable. right? To
Well,
anybody.
and right, yeah, and so other interviews that I've seen with different victims, they claim that there's medical instruments or something that help get rid of scars and just heal them quickly. Is that all something that you experienced as well?
That I'm not sure. I just know that they were down there doing stuff,
Yeah,
that, and there's drugs in play too. So, you're in and out of consciousness and you're in and out of pain and you're dissociating. So I don't know what all they did there. I do know some people talk about they would glue, they'd cut you, they'd glue you shut. And then there's also demonic, it sounds strange, but there's spells that they can do so nobody notices stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of weird,
right.
crazy stuff that they can, which makes no sense. But I've seen survivors and they show me their scars. They're everywhere on their body. And they grew up, they went to school, and nothing was ever questioned. It's like, how in the world? I had one survivor go to a doctor and she's had like 17 surgeries trying to fix her body. And the doctor asked her if her parents were still alive because he was going to sue him. He was so angry with how her body was.
Wow.
And she said, no, they're dead. But he was angry with the amount of trauma to her body because there's no way it could have happened other than trauma. So,
Wow.
yeah,
And
it's
that is horrific. Do you experience injuries today from that? I know your pregnancies were kind of odd.
yeah. My first baby was born 4 weeks early. They didn't know why. Second was 5 weeks early. They didn't know why. My third one, I went into labor at 22 weeks and then in and out of labor the rest of the time. It was horrific. And then my fourth one at 19 weeks, in and out of labor throughout. And then I had toxemia with her at the end, which you're not supposed to get toxemia on your fourth baby. Like the doctor's like, that's not normal. And then with toxemia, your blood pressure is supposed to go back to normal when you deliver the baby. Mine did not. And that's not normal. Like my body does the opposite of everything it's supposed to do. And the doctors are like, this makes no sense. I had a stroke. It impacted the wrong side of the body. She's like, that doesn't make any sense. The clot's on the wrong side. It's like, yeah, it's just me. That's just the way it goes for me. When I've had a lot of migraines. So once they were doing an MRI and they found that my sinus was scarred shut. And they're like, it's a good thing we found it because it was starting to misform your face. So they had to have surgery. They had to bore it open again. And they're like, well, what happened to you? Because this only happens if you've had previous surgeries or you've had trauma to it. Well, in all the rituals, they would cover my face and all their fingers would go right there to cover me so I couldn't breathe as their way of torturing me to get me to do something that I didn't want to do. And it's like, that's where the finger was. So they scarred it shut with how many times they cut off my oxygen, like things like that.
Wow.
So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on. Or I had a lobe of my middle lobe of my right lung scarred shut inexplicably. So they had to take that out. There's just a lot of very odd, very strange things. And the doctor's like, that makes no sense. I'm like, yeah, I know. And,
Wow.
it's just, your optic nerve pressure is really super high and we don't know why. It's like, yeah, I know. So I've given up going to doctors. It's like, there's nothing they can do for me. There's just nothing, nothing makes sense to them. Nothing works when they try to fix things the way it's supposed to work, right? It's like everything's wacky. And that's what survivors find. Their body is wacky. It just whacks everything out.
Yeah.
And I can't account for it. I don't know what it is about the abuse that causes all this stuff, but it does.
How many times do you recall being in a ritual?
That's rough.
Or do you even know? Yeah, that's hard to say.
Probably at least a couple times a week. You know, I think it's, you know, they've got their holidays, and if you ever look, it's an interesting look at a satanic ritual holiday calendar. There's a
I
lot of
have looked at
holidays.
it.
There's a
Yes.
lot of, I mean, it's overwhelming how many there are. I mean, they're always holidays. And then they're also are always prepping for holidays, which they have to have preparation rituals. And then these guys are, and ladies too, there's many women as men in these things. They're so, it's so addicting to them. Okay, so these people are possessed by demons. I'm not talking demonized. I'm talking there's demons running them, and these demons have this bloodlust to them. So you hear about serial killers having a bloodlust. Well, there's bloodlust because they're killing babies. They're killing animals. They're knifing kids. That bloodlust has to be satiated. So that's why, my dad roaming the halls during the night. And so they have to keep going and doing more and more and more. So that's why they do so many of them. So how many was there? I don't know. I'm sure there's at least 2 a week, maybe even more. But I remember being always so tired that when I was in 8th grade, my mom was in the hospital dying from another something or other. And I remember telling her, I mean, it sounds awful when I said, but at least you can sleep as much as you want. And that was my thing. I'm so tired. I am just so tired. And that made no
So
sense.
he would, yeah, right. And do you remember him pulling you out of bed or taking you and saying it's time, let's go? Or do you remember how that occurred? Or would he drug you, do you think, and take you?
Yeah, I don't have, like, I remember like being rolled up in a blanket in the back seat of the car, like when I was really little. When I'm older, I don't know. I have no idea how I ended up there or how I got home. There's so many things that are just blank.
Yeah. And then do you recall where these would take place at?
Sometimes it'd be a basement, like of a Catholic church, cabin in the woods. When the weather was nice, it would be out in the clearing and way deep in the woods someplace. Basements of people's houses, a lot of different spots. They move it around, so probably people couldn't find a pattern to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you say in the basement of a Catholic church.
Yeah.
Because then obviously they're involved.
Yeah.
In some way. But I have heard where they'll have rituals above and then they'll have the actual like rituals with sacrifices or whatever down below.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering if like every Catholic church has another altar below the altar. It would be interesting if you could really get into churches, if you could find if those exist. It would be interesting to know. And not just Catholic churches, but other churches. They get in there. I know a lot of survivors that in all denominations, they get in there and do rituals because they want to desecrate all the churches. And they do.
And I'm sure that is terrifying as a child, like being in the middle of the woods or wherever you're at. And because they would strap you down, is that right? They would strap you down and on the altar or whatever, the cement altar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can imagine when I was a child just being scared of a nightmare and screaming out for my dad. I just can't imagine being in that nightmare.
Yeah, it's horrible. And, and when people get nasty and like, just get over it. You should just be fine now. Just don't think about it. Or, whatever people do all sorts of stuff. I'm like, let me, what I want to say, and I don't, let me just tell you one ritual that I went through. Just one. And my husband, who wanted to know all of them, so he would go read my journals because he wanted to know so he could help me shoulder, which was really sweet. But he's like, if you knew just one, you wouldn't sleep. You won't sleep. If you knew one of them, there's no way you would sleep. So when people start getting nasty, when people start getting horrible, I'm like, let me tell you one. This survivors, they just, they're just whiny and whimpery and they should just be fine. It's like, let me explain to you what we're going through. Let me explain to you what trauma really is. It gets so frustrating. It's like, you have no idea. You have no idea what it is to be a child, wake up tied to a table, and then have, knowing your life, you're pretty sure you're going to die. You're pretty sure there's no way you're going to make it out of this one alive. And you go through that constantly. And then it gets to the point where you hope they kill you. And you get to that point, and then you're not gonna. Like I told my husband once, when you get older, they turn you into an abuser, where that's where they start putting your hand over your mouth. They'd make you do something horrible. It's like, no, I can't do that. They'd put their hand over your mouth till you about pass out. And then they put the knife in your hand and make you do it again and over and over and over until you finally comply. And I told my husband once, I'm like, why didn't I just let them kill me? Why? What was wrong with me? Why didn't I just let them do that? And he's like, Lisa, that was never an option on the table. I'm like, oh, that's right.
So they were making you sacrifice things.
Right. So it's so devious what they do. And it's like, talk about a psychological thriller horror movie, and you're in it, and it, there's no way out. And you're trying to figure out, how do I do this? How do I do this? And then you get dissociation. So you're going to have to do something that you literally cannot do. So then you create in your head another person. I can't do this. Oh, so here's George. George is a strong, angry kid, and he hates people. So he can do it. So George, here, you do it for me. And George is like, I can do it because I hate people. And this is a kid creation, right? So George gets all puffy and he comes out and he does what needs to be done because this is what needs to be done. And I can't do it because I could never do this to somebody, right? So then we have these dissociated parts, and that's where they start coming in. And then as we heal as adults, then we have to deal with George, who now has this ability to like, well, I don't like people. I like to hurt people. That's my job, and I do it really well, and I do it because I like to do it, because that's how I had to create him, to handle what had to be handled back then, because it was the only way in my kid mind to go forward. And we had to go forward because there was no going back, right? There's no other way. So then you have to bring them to Jesus and get them to understand that you really didn't want to do that, but you were forced to do that. And, it's just this really deep healing, tough healing time. But Jesus comes in very beautifully, and there's this sigh in it. It's just like, oh, I'm not bad. I'm not evil. Like, I had these talks with God. I deserve to go to hell, and I'm okay with that. I deserve it. So you send me there, and I get it. I really get that.
And you felt that because of the things that you were made to do.
Right.
And how many altars do you think you had?
I have no idea. I would,
yeah.
Some people say hundreds, some people say thousands. I have no idea. Because, some people say you get one altar for each ritual. Some people, you say you make several altars for ritual, like one's handling the pain, one's handling what you have to do, one's handling the horror of the whole thing. So I'm not sure. Depends on who you ask and how it goes or whatever. But The problem is that some of the people don't come to God at all because they're convinced that they're too bad, they're too dirty, and they don't come to him in the first place. And that's what breaks my heart. That's the purpose of the rituals, really, because the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And if he can destroy their ability to ever come to God, because he can make them feel that dirty and that unable to receive Jesus stepping into taking their sin on the cross, then he's won. And that's what breaks my heart more than anything else in this whole nasty business.
And have you seen, I know you've talked to a lot of survivors. Do you ever see altars coming out?
Oh yeah.
That they haven't dealt with? Yeah.
Yeah. You get things get real squirrely with altars, and I call them parts because I don't like the word altar so much because they use ALT-ARs, even though these are ALT-ERs. It's just easier for me to go with parts. But sometimes you'll just have this little kid talking to you. All of a sudden they'll switch to a little kid voice, and you just have to adapt and start talking to the little kid. Or I've had angry teens. I had this one where Jesus said, "Will you take my hand?" And all of a sudden this angry teen came out. "You don't get it. He's not just asking for my hand. He wants all this other stuff too." And she's just screaming this stuff at me. It's like, it was like 2 hours of it.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying. Let's go back to the original question without throwing all the other stuff on there. Let's just deal with question number 1. Can you just take his hand? And she goes, "Oh, all right." And then she started crying. I'm like, "What is it?" And her part was going upstairs, holding Jesus' hand, like going up into heaven. And that part got healed. It's like, if we could have just done this 2 hours ago, it would have been so much easier. But and some of these parts think they're bad. And so there's this negotiations with them. You're not bad. The people were bad. They were bad. You are not bad.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. It's scary for people who have not seen it. It sounds crazy. It looks crazy. It does to us too. But what it is a protection mechanism that kind of encapsulated the abuse to hold on to it until later in life, where we could take it out then and unpack it and heal it. And that's really what dissociation is.
And it's quite amazing to think that it is God's time, it seems like, right now in history, to bring it out. How did your memories get confirmed for you?
We went up to Michigan where it happened and did some kind of looking around, trying to validate some things. And so we were able to validate that my dad was part of a group that had a witch in it. And we were able to talk to her daughter. I think we talked to her son and her ex-husband. We went to the ex-husband. That was really interesting. And his new wife let us in the house. And it was kind of fascinating because both of them had been customers of my dad's store. I recognized both of them. I'm like, this is interesting. And remember, it was a very small town.
Yes.
And so I told him what my maiden name was. And immediately the man looked at Patrick like he was going to beat him up. And it was the weird, like Patrick and I were like, whoa. So that was a lot of validation. And then he denied knowing who I was. He denied knowing my dad. He denied knowing the pharmacy. And she goes, well, you know that pharmacy. It's right down where Subway is right now. I don't know any Subway. It's like a 2 traffic light city. He knew where the Subway was. It was just like, I think he would have denied anything but his name at that point. So that was very validating. Things like he had told Patrick, he'd always had a part of his testimony that when they were trying to find truth, that they had gone to the spiritualist camp, but it was a new age group. And he told Patrick once that they had been working on levitating tables. And Patrick's like, really? Did it move? And my dad's, oh, well, yeah, a little bit, you know. So like things like that started coming back. It's like, you know, so validating it in those ways. Found out a lady that I knew up there was doing a dissertation on SRA in the county where we were, and she had death threats and I had to leave. So
Wow.
that was very validating. Wow. So
you think the whole county was just pretty satanic?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Really,
wow.
Every city is.
Yeah.
Wherever you have power, and people go, oh, there we go, conspiracy theorists. But I'm telling you, wherever there is power, the Luciferians will go in and take it. That's what they do. If there's power, they will take it because they have to have it. It's scary, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, and now I'm personally seeing, I own a local business here and where I take on clients, and I have several clients actually who are Satanists, and they just walk around like it's no big thing. And we'll have conversations and they tell me that, oh, they don't sacrifice. They don't do those things. And,
do they tell you it's we've got to experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So experience do that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. It is interesting.
Do they tell you that they do rituals though, without killing, with knives?
They don't. They don't say that, but I believe they do.
Because I've talked to others and they tell me, oh, we do rituals, but we don't kill anybody. And when they start talking about what they're actually doing, I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this because you've got all the exact elements of what happened to me, just you're not killing somebody.
Yeah.
We're like, well, but we're not killing anybody. Like, I'm not okay with you doing that.
Yeah.
You know, that's not good. They're calling in and they're calling for these demonic entities to come into them, but they're saying they don't believe in them, right? So the Satanists are saying they don't believe in Satan as an entity, that they're more of they don't believe in God, so they're just calling out these things as metaphorical something. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and society has kind of kind of put a veil over everything to make it look like it's fun. You know, all these Netflix shows like Lucifer, people love that show. I'm like, are you kidding me? All these, the entertainment industry. I mean, people just have a veil over and they can't really see. I mean, for instance, Kylie Jenner last year, she had all over her Instagram post, she was naked and dripping in blood.
And then you have to say, how can it not be ritual? Right?
Yeah.
What is she? She is, because in the rituals, they would start dancing and they looked like they were high. Maybe they were. The way they were dancing, and they would be rubbing buckets of blood all over themselves as they were dancing naked. So if you're telling me she did that, that is a ritual thing that they do. And look at where she is. How did she get famous?
Yeah.
Nobody knows, right? They got famous because they had a reality show. Like, come on. That makes no sense. So you start looking into this, you start unpacking it, you start looking at what they're doing. How could it not be ritual?
Yeah.
Especially when they start showing that, and then her, being connected with Balenciaga. Now Balenciaga's showing you what they do, or Balenciaga with their Baal on the tape. Balenciaga. They're telling you exactly what they're doing. Baal worship is sacrificing kids. They're telling you what they're doing. They're
putting it. Yeah, they're putting it right in our face now, and some people refuse to see it or to want to talk about it. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation today. You know, in hopes for some of the people that aren't believing what I say, maybe they'll come back and look at these videos and be like, wow, this is this woman's testimony. Now, people like to gaslight, but there's only so far you can do that until it's just going to slap you more in the face. Reality.
That's why you look at Balenciaga and you start going into their artists, and they're showing extremely graphic rituals in their art, which I think that's not art. I think you should start putting those people in jail, because they're showing, you know, pentagrams, people in spread eagle on the ground in ritual, complete ritual things. And if you go into survivor stories, when they're explaining, that's exactly what Balenciaga is showing you and their artists are showing you. Or these people, whatever that lady was, having all the red on her and the 2-bit red babies going down some runways someplace. That's all death and killing babies. That's what they're showing you. We're telling you that's what they're doing, people. They're showing you what we've been talking about for a very long time. Line it up with the stories, and then you can't throw out what we're saying, because we've been saying it way before all this stuff has been exposed with the Balenciaga or Gucci. You know, Harry Styles walking by with the crib mattress. Come on. Why is that okay? Put it together.
And what does that mean? That it doesn't make any sense as far as a runway show or an art piece.
It means pedophilia. That's exactly what it means. Pedophilia goes along with satanic ritual abuse. You know, and you put it together because Gucci goes along with Balenciaga, and you start putting those pieces together. And it comes down to also the kids that are in it today, because there are kids getting sacrificed today. I was a living sacrifice, so I had to keep going through it over and over again. There's a lot of kids going through it right now. I'm talking to a lot of parents that are going through it with their kids. So you get, I'm not sure how this works, but you have ritual active parents marrying non-ritual active parents. I don't know why or how that's working, but that's happening. And then you get kids to about 4 years of age, they start disclosing to the safe parent. Safe parents like, what in the world are they talking about? So the kids start saying things like, Mom, why are they killing the babies? Mom, why are they pooping on me? Why are they why are they peeing on me? And you start they start telling them these very graphic things. So they start Googling, and then they start coming on other survivor stories, and they're like, oh my goodness, this is satanic ritual abuse. I've never heard of this before. What is this? These kids are in it today. And then in the midst of the court cases, these kids are taken away from the safe parent. They're given full custody to the satanic parents over and over and over in these court cases. And it's because the elites are running the courts.
Yeah. You really got to look at those, the judgments from the judges, that, you know, what they give people as far as punishments, when they don't give a very harsh punishment to a pedophile or to a murderer, or whatever the case is. It makes me wonder. It makes me have questions, a lot of questions. And, you know, I'm from a small town here, and I grew up with this girl who her father was the judge for all time until he retired. And he passed away a few years ago. And I go walking in the cemetery because it's right across over here, and it's just a safe place for me to go walking. And I noticed on his headstone, he's got the Freemason symbol. And it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah. Freemasons, bad. There is not a good Freemason. So if you got Freemasons around you, assume that they are sacrificing children. Just go with that assumption. Don't let your kids hang out with them.
Yeah.
Don't trust them.
Well, and what's crazy, I dated a guy when I was 18, right out of high school, and his father was a Freemason. At the time, I didn't have a clue as to who it was, what they were, anything. But we were invited to the Christmas party, and I got to go, but we didn't get. He and I, my boyfriend and I, didn't get to go in the party. We actually had to stay out in, I guess, the lobby area, and we just kind of ran around, but we weren't invited into the actual party. But so it raises questions for me there as well. Now I'm sure he was a low level Freemason, but who's to say what they were doing and what they've done and what's going on in every town, every city.
Freemasons are everywhere. Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. You start thinking about it, it's terrifying, and that's where you have to bring God into it. Because this is a huge battle between God and the devil. It's been going on forever. And God has understood, some people think that it's his allowable will that this has been going on. He hasn't stopped it. I don't believe that at all. I believe that evil came into the world, and God gave us our parents to protect us and keep us safe. That was God's protection. And when they abrogate that responsibility and put us in the rituals, that went against everything that God did to shield us and help us. They have spiritual authority over us as we're growing up. And when they give that to the devil, there's not a lot for God to work with there. I believe we're getting to the end of their ability to do that. I believe God is in this battle, and I believe that he's going to be shaking these Luciferians, and he's going to be exposing who they are and what they're doing. And I believe that's what God's about right now. I think it's very important to pay attention. I think it's very important to share satanic ritual abuse so that people know what it is. I think it's important to fight it. I think it's important to call out the Freemasons. I think it's important to call out Balenciaga, to notice, to notice pedophilia and to fight it. When you start seeing what their symbolism is, when you start listening to the pop stars in their ritualistic things that they're doing, start calling it out. That's satanic ritual right there.
Yeah.
I rebuke you.
And stop supporting it. Yeah. Rebuke it.
Rebuke it.
Yeah.
We cannot stay silent any longer. We have to call it out. Silence right now, I think, is dangerous. In the podcast like this, I really commend you for, because it's not an easy podcast to do. It's not an easy subject to call attention to, and it's not easy for anybody to listen to, and certainly nobody wants to share it. It's not like dinner conversation, but because there's kids in it and we have to get them out, we have to do it. Make people uncomfortable. I love this. Make them uncomfortable. Yeah, let's do that, because we have to.
Thank you. Yes. Yep.
Like,
and I forget what verse it is in the Bible, but it talks about what is faith without action. Because my mother, for instance, she's a devout Christian, always has been, but she refuses to have conversations about these topics because she says that God's going to take care of it. She's got faith in God. But in my eyes, it's like, we have to act. We have to be aware. We have to stop supporting.
And we have to pray.
Yeah. Yes.
God's people die for lack of knowledge. If we don't know who the enemy is, how do we fight him?
Right.
And God moves when we pray. That's why he has us to pray. And if we're not praying specifically, if we don't know what SRA is, then we're not praying about it. We're not fighting it. We have to fight this. This is important. Yeah. And let's fight it tooth and nail. This is the satanic rituals are the seat of the devil's power. It's his throne. That's where his power comes from. The more babies he kills, the more power he gets. That's why he's fighting for abortion so strongly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So we have to fight it. We have to expose it. And I believe that's this exciting time we're in right now where people are listening. People are asking for interviews and they're sharing it and they're talking about it. It's amazing. I just can't account for it. Just like every time you ask to interview me, it's like, whoa, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll tell my story, because the more people that hear, it's exposing it. And we can get out the people who are doing. I would love to sit here and name my dad's name, but I can't do that. Legally, I'm going to be in really bad trouble because the way our system is set up, if you are a survivor and you call out the name of the people who hurt you, they will take you to court and all your money is going to go into trying to protect yourself, and you're going to lose your house. You're going to lose everything you've got. And that's bad. And that's wrong. And why is our country that way? Why is our society
it's
that
so
way?
backwards. It's so broken and backwards. But honestly, I never did see this day coming where things were going to get exposed. I really didn't.
I know. It's the coolest thing
so
ever.
That's all. It is cool. It's so cool. I love it.
Or Balenciaga, people calling that out. That was cool.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
that
like,
was
whoa.
really, I'm like, yeah, like, whoa.
Caring. Yeah.
Yeah. People are waking up. People are aware of this stuff now. And it is amazing. And they're calling people out that are of high elite stature, like the Kardashians, for instance. But they don't seem like they care.
Yeah. But if people stop following them and stop watching all their stuff.
Stop supporting them.
If you are listening today and you happen to follow them, hit unfollow. Okay, maybe you're thinking, well, one person's not going to make a difference. It makes a difference to me. Just hit unfollow. Don't follow them. Don't look at anything they're doing. Yeah. If people start doing that, that takes away their power.
Yeah. It does. It sure does. And, I used to be an avid user of Kylie's lipstick. But I didn't even put the two and two together, but have you noticed her logo? It's like, it looks like blood dripping on lips.
Oh,
that's what it looks like. But I've boycotted all of that. I don't support any of that anymore, but I hope, and I hope all the people listening will think about that as well. Think about what you're buying, where you're buying it from, what you're supporting, who you're supporting. What is it with the devil and God that the devil has to express what he's doing first before it happens? Do you know about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but I think that it has to do with he needs authority to do what he's going to do. And he gets authority through agreement, human agreement. So if he says it and people don't disagree with it, then he's like legally grabbing some authority that he can use to go ahead and do what he wants to do. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And that's why they keep putting things in our face. And they always have been. We've just kind of been under this sleeping beauty sleep. It's interesting.
But I think one of the things that's really helping us right now are these low-level podcasts that we can have that aren't controlled by the media giants that are all elite controlled. And we can speak truth and they can't stop it. I mean, they can shut us down. We can come up someplace else and start speaking it there. Or they can shut us down. We can come up someplace else. But we are able to now go through and start pulling all the information. Balenciaga, everybody was able to go and look at all the artists and the cameramen and the producers, and start looking into what all of them were into. And it's like, oh my goodness, they're all into it. And we could start pulling that together where Fox isn't going to tell you, CNN isn't going to tell you, any of those big name people are not going to tell you, because the elites cover all of them. It's in all of it. So what we do is we can go and pull this together, and we can talk about it, and people can go from our podcast to podcast to podcast to podcast, get it all and get a full picture of it. So like do you know about the Franklin cover up with Omaha, Nebraska and Boys Town?
No.
So that would happen back in the 90s, and people in Nebraska were taking boys out of Boys Town with Father Flanagan. There used to be an old movie called Boys Town, and it was very famous, but it was a Catholic charity orphanage. And there was also a girls' club there, and they were taking the kids and they were taking them to Washington, D.C. and high-level Republican meetings, and they were sex trafficking them for satanic rituals. And they were taking them into the White House. This was bad. So they started trying to expose it. And they worked really super hard to expose it. And they shut it down. About 10 people died in the process. One of the girls that came forward telling everybody exactly what happened, she passed a polygraph test. I mean, she stuck to her story. She got jailed for perjury, and she did not perjure herself. I mean, it's insane what happened, and they covered it up. I mean, if you can put your emotions aside, you go, that cover up was amazing. There's a guy that died in the hospital, poisoned. No autopsy was ever done. How do you pull that off? Like, how do you pull that off when everybody's calling for an autopsy and it never happens?
Yeah.
That's a cover up. But now, because we have all these podcasts and we can go looking at this stuff, we can pull all this information. They can't cover it up the way they used to.
Yeah.
So as God's exposing it, all of us can keep talking about it on all these podcasts, and we can get it out there. You're not going to hear it on the top news channels. You're going to hear it on here.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And I don't know if you remember, it was last year when this was on the Walmart online channel, or, the website. But you would search certain things, and it was like little girl stuff or little boy stuff. And it would be like $5,000 for a little pair of boy shoes, or like $12,000 for a little girl outfit. And it would say the ages and everything. And I just didn't believe it. So I went on there to check myself, and I saw it from my own eyes. I think I actually took a screenshot, or like a video of it as well. I need to really dig into my videos and stuff to see if I have that, because I don't know if you could look at it now today and it would show up, but it sure did then. It's like, what is that? It's
got to be sex trafficking.
Right?
Yes. I mean, what else
you would
could it
think?
Be? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because no one's going to spend $5,000 for a pair of shoes at Walmart.
Right.
Unless it's something, a bigger package coming.
Yeah.
But people refuse to.
Wayfair did that once, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Wayfair. Yeah. Yep. It's happening all around us. We just have to be aware and use discernment. I didn't even know what discernment was until a couple of years ago. So I think people need to come back to God more and learn who God is, learn about Christianity, what it really means to be a Christian and how to be a Christian.
In that fear of everything around us, because this evil is palpable now. It's scary to go out because you see it everywhere, and it's going to get worse. God is bigger. Like, in the desperation to heal for me, I dove into the Bible with everything that I had. I dove into a relationship with God, and I found him there. And he is real. Just like the demonic is real, God is just as real and he's just as tangible and he is trustworthy. And just as evil as the demonic is, God is good. He is trustworthy. He is kind. He's loving. So you get what we call saved, right? That means you believe that Jesus died on the cross, that he rose again, and you just tell him you're sorry for your sins and that you want to live for him. That's what salvation is. And then you live your life for him with this desperation and this passion. God, I want you more than anything. And you start reading the Bible and you find that there's incredible things in there. And like, I have found life in there and everything I need. Like, there's a passage in there that says you'll find roadways in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And when I was so lost and broken, I'm like, that's what I need. I need a way out and I don't see it. And if God can do that, he can get me out of the deep depression and the suicidal ideations that I had. And he did. It took a long time, but he did. He very gently led me through healing, and it was gruesome and it was hard, but he got me out of it. Or there's another passage, he'll give you beauty for ashes, strength for tears, joy for mourning, peace for despair. And he does that. Or you go through the Psalms and King David, I would say he's bipolar. He was happy, then he was sad, and he was happy, and he was sad. And that's what depression is. You know, you have good days, you have bad days, or sometimes you just have bad days, or, you know, whatever. He went through it too. But even in the midst of it, God is there in the goodness of God in the land of the living. Or that he says he'll satisfy you with years. I remember seeing that and thinking, that means I'm not going to be depressed with forever, because if he says he's going to satisfy me with years, that means there's a satisfaction there. That's not barely holding on until I get to heaven. That means I'm going to find a point where I can live life and enjoy it. Now that sounded like a pipe dream for a long time, but now I am. Like, even in the midst of all of this, and, you know, talking about this stuff all the time is not an easy thing to do, and ministering to people and helping them is not an easy thing to do, but I'm enjoying life. You know, I can look at the sky and look at the blues in the sky and go, wow, God, how did you make that blue? That's gorgeous. You know, and just small things we can enjoy. And I don't have to be rich. You know, I don't have to have all these certain things going my way all the time, because generally they don't. You know, there's always stuff, life happens. But in the midst of all of it, there's this peace, there's joy. And finding Christians that are nice. There's a lot of Christians out there that are not nice, don't have anything to do with people that aren't nice. Find people that are kind. Find people that are compassionate and that they give to you. You know, they give you their heart. They give you the ability to listen. If you're having a hard day, they're not like, oh, you should just be fine. Just get over it. Just go, you know, get closer to God and you'll be okay. Or I've heard, go read the Psalms and go on. That doesn't help anything. You know, God gave us emotions. It's okay to be emotional. If you're having a hard day, it's okay to say, you know, I'm having a really hard day. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Tell me about it. Can I pray with you? Can I help? You know, can I come sit?
I think that's one of the biggest problems right now in society is people aren't listening. You know, you'll tell someone something and they're on to the next. They don't ask you about it. They don't go into that with you. I think people need to listen more.
Well, I think that part of exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit, and the Bible said, we will know you by your fruit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, meekness, faithfulness, self-control. You see that in compassion that people have for others.
Yeah.
If people are truly, truly following after God, they will have the capacity to listen. They will have the capacity to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me pray for you. Can I take you out for coffee? You know, I'm not somebody that can come in and fix everything for you, but I can do something to help you feel better. I can give compassion. Like, can I come and sit in your house for a little bit, just so you're not alone? Stuff like that. I think we can all do that. Or, you're in another part of the world or a part of the country, like, hey, let's talk. You don't have a phone? Ooh, jump on Instagram. Do you know that they've got video that's free? You jump on their messenger part of Instagram. I've talked to people in Australia all the time, and it's perfect connection. It's absolutely free.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse. We have the connections. We can spend time with people wherever they are, and wherever they're hurting, we can do that. So as Christians, we need to look around, and sometimes we get put off by Christians going, oh yeah, those Christians, they're nasty. I'm posing maybe they're not Christians because they're not exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit. Bible says you'll know them by their fruit. My parents posed as Christians that were not, they were nasty people. So I think a big test of who's Christian and who's not is how they handle the hurting in our society. Let's be the hands and feet of Jesus. Let's have compassion. Jesus had compassion for the hurting. I don't see anybody that came hurting to him. Jesus once said, you should just be over it by now. Just stop limping. He didn't do it. He was filled with compassion for people.
Yeah.
It's not that
and
hard.
I think that's part of their plan, is to divide us to where we are not coming together as a body of Christ to listen to each other and to have, help and compassion for one another. They're dividing us more and more with objects, it's with entertainment, with movies, and the devil's trying to keep us busy.
Yeah, people are busy. They're distracted. It works.
Yeah.
But let's we can change that. We can get undistracted. Let's start looking people in the eyes again and going, oh, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Unplug a little bit from the matrix.
Yeah. We have that ability. We can make changes.
We do. And that's the thing, we have more abilities and power than what we even understand as a human from what God gave us. And it comes from God. I actually came out of the New Age. I was born a Christian, but then, I got into the metaphysical New Age stuff really hardcore. And, you don't realize when you're in it, it's all false hope. And this doesn't work, so you're looking for the next thing. But when I found God again, I realized God was all I needed. I didn't need crystals. I didn't need this. I didn't need to do that. I just needed one thing, and that was God. And that right there is so freeing feeling to know that, you don't have to spend all this time doing all this other junk or spending all this money. You have it right here. This thing that people are searching for in life, it's right there. And it's in the Bible. Like you said, it's the Bible is definitely a roadmap if you're willing to listen and to have a relationship with God.
Yeah, if the Bible's new, start in the book of John. It's in the New Testament. It's a great place to start. And if it doesn't make sense to you the first time, read it over. Like sometimes I'll read one chapter over and over and over and over until I really start getting it. And then move on to the next chapter, read it over and over and over till you start getting it. And, just start moving through the Bible and start figuring it out. And it is deep, and there's so much to it. And there's so many things all over the place. I mean, I've been studying it since I was 7. And I had a Bible study with my daughter the other night. She's 25, and she opened up the book of Proverbs to me. And she said, Mom, do you know the difference between sinners and evil man? And I'm like, no. And she goes, well, there's a difference. I'm like, I didn't know that. And she said, sinners can repent, but the evil men, the Bible says they don't repent. I'm like, really? And she started showing it to me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I never realized that. And it the whole book of Proverbs is filled with it. I'm like, that's fascinating. I never knew that. And she's like, I thought you knew everything in the Bible. I'm like, no, I don't think you can ever know everything in the Bible.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
There's always these revelations that come up for you, new understandings. And I call it a download from God, because sometimes you don't know. And then just 1 minute,
Yeah.
and it's like, thank you, God. That's the piece of information I needed at this moment.
And he does. He speaks to us. He shows us stuff. He opens things up to us. Like Proverbs, I thought was mostly just don't sleep around and ask for wisdom. I thought that's what the whole book was. And then she started showing me that. I'm like, oh, wow, I need to reread those. I missed everything in Proverbs. And it's like that in the Bible. And it's kind of exciting. Or I did a study once about when God moves. It's like he doesn't move much. Usually when there's a throne room scene, he's just seated on the throne and that's all you get. But so I started looking into it. Whenever he moves, it's something really big is going down. It's powerful. Like if he moves, the whole heaven goes silent. I mean, that's how important it is when God moves. And it was a fascinating study.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, just like finding different things like that to go through and just study that. Or River of Life. Just started to go through there. Like one day it's like, that's interesting. Or lately the Tree of Life, and then just started looking at trees and going through the Bible on that. And then you have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then you have cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree with a cross. And then you get into the groves where they sacrificed kids. And so trees are, extremely important. And you start getting in, it's like, boy, this is fascinating. Just one day it's like, what is it about trees? And you start looking in through the Bible. A lot of fascinating ways. I mean, you read through it, kind of get a timeline and things going on, and then you start going through themes and different ideas, and boy, there's just all sorts of stuff to find in there.
Do you currently do a Bible study with a group or anything?
No,
do you
not right
lead
now.
One?
No, I'm starting a ministry with a friend, Rosie. It's called the John 10:10 Life. And we have a Bible study that we have written called Daddy God. And we are in the process. We've run it a few times in person, and we're working on getting it up online. So that's going to be coming. But that is being able to come to God as our dad, where a lot of people have trouble with that relationship with him because of bad dads down here, bad teaching, where they think God is angry, God is distant, God is a disciplinarian. And because of that, they don't trust him. So this is a class that we'll be running here shortly. So got some of that stuff kind of coming up. And we're starting some podcasting on the John 10:10 Life, and put some teaching sort of Bible studies sort of stuff coming up on that. So we've got a couple up on love of God. So we're just getting that up and going now.
Okay. Yeah. I saw something on your channel about something like that as well. And maybe this is a good time to wrap it up, and we can talk about how the listeners can find you and your videos and all of this stuff in your book.
Okay. I am on cross platforms as Only God Rescued Me. On Anchor, it's Only God Rescued Me, My Journey from Satanic Ritual Abuse, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Instagram and Facebook, all it's Only God Rescued Me. We are also on YouTube, Only God Rescued Me, also the John 10:10 Life. So we're starting to merge them together. Also, I have the book, Only God Rescued Me, My Journey from Satanic Ritual Abuse. And then I have a second book, which is You've Got the Wrong Guy. And that's a journey into understanding the difference between God and the devil, because a lot of people confuse who's doing what. So being able to make that line and to differentiate between the two of them. So I have those.
And can you find that book on Amazon as well?
Yep, they're both there.
Okay, I will put that link down in the description as well. And I think those are going to be some fascinating reads. I'm excited to read them. And so the other, are y'all merging the two channels?
Well, yeah, I think they're going to still be somehow. I'm not sure exactly how we're doing it right now. They're kind of together. You can still find mine as Only God Rescued Me, and then we'll have the other. We're going to get a website. I don't know. Still
Okay.
ironing all this out. But if you want
Yeah.
to email me, you can email me at onlygodrescuedme@yahoo.com. And I have a team that can get back with you. And we also have some Facebook groups for Christian SRA survivors that if you want to get plugged into a community, it's Christian SRA Survivors Support Group. So you can send in a request to join that and get a part of that as well, where we talk about dissociation, we talk about repression, healing, scriptures, and try to make a community of survivors.
Oh, that's an excellent resource for people, because I'm sure people like yourself, they probably feel alone, and so it's good to have these resources now that maybe weren't existing before.
Yeah, we had to be abused alone, but we don't have to heal alone. And we find that we heal a lot faster in community, where you can put questions out, people can answer, and having somebody that's ahead of you that can kind of give you the answers you're looking for can knock years off the healing process.
Yeah, that is very true. And for any of the listeners out there, I encourage you guys to go to Lisa's YouTube channel, and she's got a lot of videos on there that are really, really great to watch. A lot of survivors. So if you're interested in watching more of these survivor testimonies, Lisa's channel is the one to go to. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I hope to have you on again, as I could talk to you forever. It's just such an interesting testimony and story, and you're filled with knowledge, and you're really interesting to talk with and to listen. And I love your interview style as well. So I encourage everybody to go over to your channel and to watch the videos. But for now, we will say we'll see you down the road. We never say goodbye, but see you down the road. And thank you, Lisa, for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me, Abby.
Thank you, Lisa.